One, are the drones over New Jersey looking for radioactive material? Will Robert F. Kennedy Jr. get confirmed as the nominee for Health and Human Services? Will college football be ruined and all college football coaches leave the profession within 2 to 3 years? The biggest mysteries in America with Senator Tommy Tuberville. 2, the presidential suite at Army-Navy was full of the biggest power players in the world. It might have been the most powerful room in the world. Isn't it interesting that it was also filled with outsiders and disruptors? Maybe that's why it's been such a battle for Donald Trump. 3, the battle for Pete Hegseth now includes the man who called out the lack of accountability in Afghanistan. Stu Scheller, today, here on The Will Cain Show. It is The Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page, terrestrial radio from coast to coast, but always on demand by subscribing at Apple or on Spotify. You can also join us live every Monday through Thursday right here at Fox News YouTube. Just hit subscribe in the little button in the text description underneath this live stream. Set a reminder, jump into the comments section, and then you too will be a member of the Willisha. This is our final march through the holiday season, through the Christmas week and holiday. I think you should stick around. I think there's a lot that we need to talk about in the coming weeks here at the Will Cain Show. I think you should buckle up. I think you should subscribe because I think there's going to be a lot you want to keep up with. We'll review the past year. We'll review 2024, but I think you need to fasten your seatbelts here for 2025. I'm not telling you I'm going to be appointed the Secretary of Information. I'm telling you, though, this is the place you're going to want to turn to. I promise you, when it comes to information, the Will Cain Show. We had a lot of information today because we're looking at some of the biggest mysteries in America. And I would love to start breaking them down with someone who is a power player in Washington, D.C., who's also been a power player on the sidelines. I'd love to break them down with someone who's one of us. Let's get to it with story number 1. He is the former head coach at Auburn, at Texas Tech. Where else, Coach? It's
Ole
escaping
Miss,
my memory.
Cincinnati.
My memory.
Ole Miss,
Cincinnati. Yes.
Yeah, several places, yeah.
Cincinnati. I knew there was a Midwest in there, and that's what stopped me down. It's Cincinnati. I couldn't remember, was it Iowa State, Cincinnati? I don't know how I let Ole Miss slip. It is Alabama, Senator Tommy Tuberville. Good morning, Coach.
Good morning, Will. Good to be with you. And you are exactly right. It is going to be a battle starting January the 3rd when we come back here the whole year. So people need to buckle their seatbelts because the Democrats and the crazies aren't going to go away.
Tell me about that battle. Today, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. begins, I believe, his meetings on Capitol Hill. Tulsi Gabbard was there last week. Oddly, Coach, I suspected that the attention would move on from nominee for Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and turn its attention to Tulsi Gabbard and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. That hasn't seemed to have happened yet. There's still a lot of fire trained on Hegseth. What are you feeling right now, though, about Gabbard and RFK?
Well, I think it'd be fine. Everybody tries to be relevant up here, Will. It's all for show to get their picture taken, get on TV, and give their opinion. At the end of the day, this is President Trump's nominees. This is his assistant coaches that he wants to get everything turned around in our country. We as Republicans need to get on board. Now, of course, you have Republicans that are out there question Pete and question Tulsi and RFK Jr. My answer to that is, hey, what we're doing up here right now, not working, and what's been done in the past is not working. We need to do something different, and that's what President Trump understands. His first term, he had a bunch of deep state people that were pushed on him. This is not deep state. These are people that actually love this country, and they need to be confirmed quickly so they can get to work.
Do you feel like you and, Senate Majority Leader John Thune, and quite honestly, just Donald Trump will be able to get the full Republican support? Because you point out, the media and the Democrats are going to launch their attacks. It will be a battle. And you're right. But the truth is it doesn't have to be a battle because there's 53 Republican senators. And I understand that a few of those are in, I guess, swing or independent states. and therefore reflect some swing or independent streaks, but there's still a majority. Even canceling those out, there's still a majority in the Senate. But I mean, I'm particularly interested in how those Republicans respond to former Democrats. Hegseth is a separate category, but you can never question his ideological backbone. I'm really curious how the Republicans are going to respond to former Democrats like Tulsi and RFK.
Yeah, they're not going to look at them in a good light. Will, they're not. They might get one or two Democrats in the long run to vote, for Republican, but they pretty much vote party line. They should be the ones doing the deep digging down to find out if there's anything that we can really wrap our hands around that's bad about any of these nominees. But it's actually coming from Republicans, and again, everybody's got a little bit of a background. Okay, everybody's had problems over the years, and you have to work through them. There's not one person that I've talked to that should not be voted by and on in the hearings and on the floor when confirmation comes of any of these nominees. That they're all qualified. I like the fact that they're a lot younger than a lot of the nominees that have come through in the past. And I'm excited about all of them because change needs to happen. Because if it doesn't happen under President Trump, the country will go all the way down to the bottom, and our kids and grandkids will have to build it back.
And you're kind of interesting on this, Coach. Like I've seen a hearing, I've seen a Senate hearing meeting where you're questioning individuals about, for example, red dye 4, red dye 3. This idea of nutrition in food, of course, which is being championed by RFK. That's something that you've shown interest in. That's what I was like. How interested are other Republicans in looking into our food?
Well, they should be very interested because our healthcare system, number one, since Obamacare is not very good. And we have a chronic illness with our young people coming up because of the processed foods and the things that we put in our foods. We all should be very concerned about this because the more people that we can keep healthy, the less our healthcare costs are going to be. But it looks like it goes hand in hand with the things that we give our kids, the things that we give all of us. And I don't care what age, it creates chronic illnesses. It causes bad things to happen. And, we can correct it. This is one thing that we can correct. And I'm glad RFK's in it. I hear a lot of people say, well, he doesn't know anything about healthcare. He doesn't know anything about this or that. Hey, our healthcare system sucks. Okay. So if you got the answers, what the heck are you doing up here? You should have fixed it by now. Robert Kennedy is the perfect person to put a light on all of these problems, from vaccines to what we just talked about, red dyes, anything that put on our food when we're growing it, anything that can keep us from getting sick and our kids getting sick. We need to work on that.
Last time you and I were together, I think it was about a month ago, we touched on this. So I was on Saturday at Army Navy, and I got to hang out with Coach Meyer for a while. I don't know what your relationship is with Urban Meyer, but I was with him, and you and I, when we talked about this, you get this sense, and I think it's only built since last time we talked, like this college football thing is a train that is full speed ahead and is quickly running out of tracks. Like it feels like as good as it's going and everybody's loving college football and this 12-team playoff and the attention and the ratings, there's this ticking time bomb underneath the train that is NIL and transfer portal. I'm not sure. I haven't verified this, Coach. I thought I saw this morning or late last night that Ryan Williams, the freshman wide receiver at Alabama, has entered the transfer portal. I'm not sure. In fact, I want you guys to fact check me back in New York if I got that wrong, because that would be huge. He's like the best freshman receiver in the country. And there'd be no reason for him to leave Alabama other than somebody's waving a bunch of money in his face to go somewhere else. I guess I can hope that's the Longhorns. But it does feel like, whether I'm talking to you or Urban or I've seen stuff like, we may see this profession hollowed out. Like coaches, like I can't. Weirdly, Belichick's going to go do this in North Carolina while everybody else is going, I don't even know what this job is anymore. I don't know how to keep up with college football.
Well, Will, the train is already off the track, and it's flipping end over end. It is a disaster, and it's going to get worse and worse. Again, I'm for all these kids making money. This all goes back for years. The NCAA could not come up with a formula to give revenue sharing to the players. All the coaches were making money, the assistants, all athletic directors, presidents are making $2 or $3 million now. It's out of control. The spending is way out of control. All these Taj Mahals that are built for athletes, which are you don't need that. We need to get back to education. There's kids. All these kids can now, with the way that the rules are, Will, is they can transfer every year for 5 years, every year, and you're not going to get a degree. So the cat's out of the bag. Supreme Court said they can make money. That's good, but we need some kind of rules and regulations. You got to remember, college football is the second most watched sport in the country behind the NFL. It's watched 2 times more than the NBA. And the programming, just think of all the games. And where we fall short here is all of the football teams and the conferences getting together and saying, okay, here we are. Y'all bring us, TV broadcasting companies, y'all bring us your bid to put us on TV. Right now, they get $4 billion as a group a year for TV rights. It should be 12, 14 billion. And if they were to do that, then you'd be able to fund all the Olympic sports, all the women's sports.
Right.
You wouldn't have to be in all this stuff. You wouldn't be in this fix that we're in right now.
That's another part of the train that's running off the tracks that people don't appreciate, the end of Olympic sports, which are subsidized by the revenue off of football. And by the way, my guys are telling me that no confirmation that Ryan Williams has officially entered the transfer portal. But so real quick on this college football thing, what can you guys do? I know there's interest. I know that I think that Speaker Johnson's also interested in this. Like, how can we help start to bring some organization to it? People have said you can't have NIL and transfer portal. Those two things combined, that's what's killing it. Like, you can waive money and then guys transfer unlimited number of times. So you told me last time we were together, like, you need binding contracts. If you commit to a university, you get money, you sign a contract, and if you violate that contract, you have to forfeit money or some other penalty. How can you guys bring organization to this chaos?
Well, the last 3 years, Joe Manchin and I have worked on what we call the PASS Act, and it's not our bill. Basically, it's a bill from coaches and ADs and presidents and NCAAs and players, and it's a good bill. We're going to have to change it to some degree because, as you just said, the transfer portal is there, okay? And now you've got players making money. Now you've got $20 million that every university's got to come up with every year now to pay for revenue sharing. So if you take a business, Will, and you say, okay, here's 20% more you got to put on top of your bottom, your top line, you'd go bankrupt. Well, that's what's going to happen in the country. We're going to lose college sports. So at the end of the day, we've got to sign players. And if you're going to give them money, they have to sign contracts. I would say up to 3 years, where you have to give that school 3 years of your hard work and get your education. If you break that, then instead of setting out a year, you got to pay money. I mean, it's going to cost you. So if we're paying players have to be responsible on the other end. And again, it might not be the fix that we have to have, and I hate to get the federal government involved in this, but at the end of the day, I don't think anybody else can fix it. I think we're going to have to do something to fix this.
All right. I want to move to a couple other topics with you with the few minutes I have left with you, Senator. What can you tell me about these drones? I don't know what kind of hearings, what kind of intel briefings you're in. I don't know what you can share with us. I don't know. The latest people are saying is it's hunting radioactive material, but we're all left in the dark. What's going on with these drones over New Jersey?
Well, they won't tell us either. And that just tells you how broken the system is here, especially with this administration. I promise you, if Donald Trump was in office, the cat would be out of the bag, whatever it is. And as you heard him say yesterday, we know where the drones are taking off. We know where they're going, circling the area they're covering. And he said, why doesn't the administration just come out and say it? We're the same way here. We today, for the first time, have been told we as senators will get a hearing on this. But I'm telling you this, they won't tell us a dang thing. They do know, as President Trump said, he gets classified hearings and briefings. And so if it was a danger, I would hope that this administration would come out and say something. But, you can't count on this group. President Biden probably doesn't even know there are drones out there. I don't know who's running the White House. A bunch of 20-year-old kids probably, because this whole country is in a tailspin. And then we got wars all over the world and now drones that nobody will tell us about.
20-year-old kids. That's who was running the Twitter account for Kamala HQ. So I don't think it's beyond the pale that they could be running the United States government as well right now. Senator Tuberville, we got a big 2025 coming up on a lot of different topics. I hope it will stay together here and continue talking. I think we're going to have some interesting platforms to do so. So I appreciate you and look forward to talking more, Senator Tuberville.
Thank you, Will. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Yeah, I don't know. If he doesn't know, how are we supposed to know what's going on with the drones over New Jersey? Anyway, we also got to talk about, did you guys see there's some talk about Liz Cheney having charges brought against her because of false evidence pushed forward during the January 6th committee hearings, specifically their star witness, Cassidy Hutchinson, who was saying false things, bringing false evidence, and Liz Cheney brought that forward, putting her culpable for charges. There's a lot coming up in 2025. A lot coming up with disruptors at the helm, okay? That's what let's get into next. Let's go back to that presidential suite. Let's talk about the most powerful room in the world, weirdly all of a sudden, run by outsiders, including Donald Trump. That's coming up on the Will Cain Show. Hey, have you ever wondered what happened to legendary Chuck Norris? I recently saw a video he made, and I was shocked. He's in his 80s. He's still kicking butt, and he's working out, and he's staying active. What's even more shocking is he's stronger, can work out longer, and even has plenty of energy left over for his grandkids. He did this by just making one change, and he says he still feels like he's in his 50s. His wife did it too. She started doing this one thing, and she's never felt better. She says she feels 10 years younger, and her body looks leaner, and she has energy all day. So Chuck made a special video that explains everything. And make sure you watch it by going to chuckdefense.com/Cain. Or you can click on the link below this video right now if you're watching The Will Cain Show. It's going to change the way you think about health. Once again, that's chuckdefense.com/Cain. And click on the link in the description below to watch the video now. You won't believe how simple it is. Reminder here. The legendary Chuck Norris is a whopping 84 years old and yet has more energy than me. He discovered he could create dramatic changes to his health simply by focusing on 3 things that sabotage our body as we age. Watch his method by clicking the link in the description box below. That is chuckdefense.com/CAIN. More Will Cain Show coming up. A room full of disruptors, a room full of outsiders. Also now the most powerful room in the world. It is the Will Cain Show. Streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. Hit subscribe at Apple, Spotify, or right here beneath this live stream on YouTube. YouTube, become a member of the militia. I want to share with you guys in New York this. I got sent this to me this morning. This is over on X. Miss Zuck says, "Who's left? Will Cain's wife?" I was kind of curious. What is that? What are they talking about? My wife. Careful. Yeah. I don't know.
On the
So
left?
I had to scroll up. What are they? Who's left? Not like who's on the left, but who's left. Got backwards hat going today, huh? This is lacrosse James.
I think
This is not young establishment James. This is Upper East Side bar James. What is this backwards hat James?
Oh, honestly, it was one of those mornings where you woke up at 3:40, you realized you couldn't go back to sleep, so it was just kind of a wreck of a morning. You wore a hat into work to cover up the bad hair.
I will say it was forward.
Second.
It was forward when the show
When you're
started.
in the office, it's forward, but we're back here. I'm like, you know what? It might work.
So it was a last second decision.
Josh Holmes has pulled it off on his show, but I don't know. I'm really trying
backwards?
I'm really trying to shake this establishment label. Like you say, Glenn Youngkin's
You're wearing
great
a
one
vest,
time.
dude.
But you are establishment, and now you just look like an establishment bro on Saturday morning with your hat backwards, and your tuft of hair poking out above the the strap. Who's left? Will Cain. Not who's on the left, but like who's left? Will Cain's wife, says Ms. Suck. That's in response to the following. Donald J. Trump post from his Truth Social. I am pleased to announce that I will nominate Leah Francis Campos as United States Ambassador to the Dominican Republic. Leah served our country as a CIA case officer before becoming senior advisor to the Western Hemisphere on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Leah is a mother to 4 beautiful children, and she comes from a family of patriots. Her sister, the outstanding Rachel Campos Duffy of Fox News, and brother-in-law of Sean Duffy, who will be Secretary of Transportation, are also wonderful patriots. Rachel's sister, now the ambassador to the Dominican Republic.
That's awesome.
So who's left? Will Cain's wife?
That makes sense now.
It is fascinating what is happening there in Washington, D.C. And that takes us back, by the way, for a moment to that presidential suite at Army-Navy. You know, I was saying to you guys, you wake up one day, and not so much even that your friend is Secretary of Defense, but you know everybody in the biggest power positions, not just in America, but in the world. And you're like, what happened? And it isn't that I all of a sudden am 49 years old. It's not even that everyone is getting accomplished. I mean that. It's like, yes, these are accomplished people. But to me, Dan, you have some of the images you can see from that day. Like, what you're seeing is actually a very, very rare and unique moment in America. Like, I don't think that whatever is going on right now is probably what was felt by the people that knew Barack Obama and his circle, or even the people that knew George W. Bush. This is something different with President Trump. Tulsi Gabbard, Elon Musk, Pete Hegseth, RFK. These are all outsiders. It's really wild. This is different. This is not the same thing as any other incoming administration. Even if you were friends with Karine Jean-Pierre and she invited you to the White House Christmas party where Jill Biden had decorated the White House, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I'm in a room with Jill and KJP and, you know, whoever else. I don't think it's the same. I'm willing to hear that out, because the same thing that makes them lose their minds about these nominees, oh, they're unqualified, they're outsiders, are the same things that makes it so exciting. Like, you look around and you're like, Vivek, Kash Patel. And you're like, this is not normal. And guess what? I think that's good. It's not normal. If you today go, oh my gosh, this is scary because it's not normal, what is it that you like normally about Washington, D.C.? Now, I'll tell you, everything about Trump is abnormal. And that's good. I even give you MSNBC's Stephanie Ruhle talking about the difference in her approach. And she is anti-Trump. Her difference in her reception from Biden versus Trump. Watch.
The day after Donald Trump had that crazy rally at Madison Square Garden.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I rolled the dice, and I called him on the phone. And he answered.
Of course he did. Of course.
The reverse of that, if I were to want to connect with VP Harris or President Biden, there's 50 people between me and that. I could write a note that maybe could get to somebody, then through Pony Express and a pigeon, something might end up in a mailbox near them.
That is not normal. And even she recognizes that. She recognizes this unique moment. I can't, you have to feel excited about the abnormality. It's in a level of excitement that people are willing to make sacrifices to their careers. Do you think this, everyone's going to see nefariousness. You think this is a more valuable way for Elon Musk to spend his time than working on catching rockets? You think this is more valuable than Vivek or whatever he's working on in private equity? You think this is more valuable for Pete? Here, how about this? Trump talked about that, the sacrifices made by Pete. By the way, he also brought up Rachel Campos Duffy.
And you.
And me, Will Cain. Watch.
He gave up a tremendous amount. If this didn't work, it would be a tragedy. Because, but that's what he loves. He loves the military. I never talked to him about anything else. He'd talk about the military. He'd come to see me about a soldier that was unfairly treated, and could I help? That's the only thing I virtually ever talked to him about. And I always remembered it. I've seen him many times, and I don't think I've ever had a subject on anything other than military with him. That's where his love is. And he didn't say, well, I'd like to think about it. I'd like to talk to my family. He said, not even a contest. And, you know, he was going through the roof over there. He was doing great. They have the #1 show that Saturday and Sunday with Will and Rachel. That was great chemistry.
That was great chemistry. My man knows TV.
Great chemistry.
He does.
Hard to repeat. Hard to repeat. You
It's almost as good as our chemistry.
Wow.
think he watches this now?
You can't create it. Can't create it. I mean, you can't manufacture it. It just happens. It's lightning in a bottle.
We do it with a delay.
Here on the Will Cain Show?
Yeah.
Way to shout me out. Thanks, bro.
Maybe in the
That's not
future,
about
that's
you.
what he'll say. They've got a good thing going there on the Will Cain Show with, I think it's 2 days. Yeah. I really like tinfoil. I like what he has to say.
I did try to get you to take a video of Trump saying, you should watch the Will Cain Show.
Everybody's talking
Monday
about
through Thursday, noon Eastern.
Will does a weird thing with his hands, but that's okay. That's all right. We love him.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating moment. And I guess what I'm getting at, and I really want you to think about, is that every one of those people, as opposed to those that fill out a Biden administration or an Obama administration, or for that matter, a Bush administration, are full of outsiders. And you can sit there and go, oh my gosh, what are their qualifications? And that's what they're going to do. That's what they're going to do come January. And my answer is their qualifications are that they are outsiders. That is what qualifies them. And that is freaking exciting, man. And it might just be not only rare, but once in a lifetime. This moment, those people, I think this is our last best chance to save America. On that note, one man that called for accountability, who pointed out the problems in our withdrawal from Afghanistan, who was alone and had to serve time in the brig for telling the truth about Afghanistan, today heads to Capitol Hill, where he's also going to tell the truth about Pete Hegseth. But first, Stu Scheller joins us here on The Will Cain Show. Next. Lieutenant Colonel Stu Scheller told the truth about Afghanistan today. He's going to tell the truth about Pete Hegseth. It is The Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page, terrestrial radio, coast to coast, but always available on demand at Spotify or Apple. Just hit subscribe, Spotify, Apple, or on YouTube. I mentioned earlier this conversation about Liz Cheney potentially facing criminal charges, and of course, everybody's going to run with it. The MSNBCs and the CBSs of the world are going to run with it and say, revenge. They're going after their enemies. But Jack Posobiec is doing great work over at Human Events, and he's posting on X. A House report recommends FBI investigation into Liz Cheney over alleged witness tampering on January 6th committee. The story is that Cassidy Hutchinson changed her testimony. She's her star witness. You remember Cassidy Hutchinson? She said that Donald Trump tried to commandeer the beast, the Secret Service vehicle, and take it back to the Capitol or whatever. Well, now it's like how much of that was coordinated with Liz Cheney. They got text messages up. And, they're going beyond this, too. There's Posobiec is posting about Alyssa Farah as well. I mean, this isn't going after your enemies. This is about, corruption. A couple of days after we talk about FBI agents embedded into the crowd at January 6th, now the leaders of the January 6th committee manipulating evidence, all designed for one thing, to sharpen and hone their biggest political tool and spear that they would jab at President Trump. Oh, man, there will be, hopefully, some accountability. I think there's going to be some accountability at the FBI with Kash Patel. What's up, 2 days? I know you had something from the comments section. What's up, Dan?
Yeah, so there's a couple people wondering in the chat. Caroliana said, who is replacing Pete on the weekend show? They're wondering.
Did I tell you?
It's too soon.
Forever who's asking that question, that you share the concerns and the mindset of the most powerful man in the world. When I spoke to President Trump on Saturday, that's what he wanted to talk about. Did I tell you that?
No, really?
100%. That's what he wanted to talk about.
That's pretty wild.
He's like, best show on television. I'm like, yeah, well, you ruined it.
Yeah.
You destroyed the team. And that's
still be
what, like, when you see those
one.
pictures, we're laughing. He's like, you're going to be all right. You've got Rachel. But he wanted to talk about who's going to replace Pete. Yeah. he had opinions. And
You think
wanted
he
to share
sat
it
and
with
watched
me.
Fox and Friends
so,
weekend?
What's that?
I bet he sat and watched Fox and Friends weekend every weekend.
He's an early riser.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Absolutely. Comment section, I can tell you the president is also concerned about that and working on that. Speaking of accountability, so Kash Patel, FBI accountability, January 6th committee. How about accountability within our military structure? That was sorely lacking, obviously, when it came to Afghanistan. There was only one man who called it out. He was Lieutenant Colonel Stu Scheller. He leads now the vets for Pete Hegseth. He is a former Marine, and he's going to Capitol Hill tomorrow, where he thinks it's important to meet with, I think, Stu, how many different senators, and what is your message to them about Pete Hegseth?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on the show. We're up to 14 meetings with senators and staffs tomorrow. Our message to them is just to remind them that the vets in America, the actual warfighting community, overwhelmingly wants Pete Hegseth. And I think it's important that our voice is heard because, you know, I know you've covered it, but right now the military is in a really bad place. And I think having an outsider, someone that can seek accountability but get us right back on the right track is important. So we're just making sure that they can hear our voice.
So let's go back, Stu. So you're the only guy in the wake of that, you know, embarrassing and horrific withdrawal from Afghanistan. You're the only guy that stands up and goes, "Hey, you know, put your medals, put everything on the table."
On the table.
And you did. And you're like, I can't be here. You know, that's what you said. If this is the way we conduct business. I think there's yet to be, even in response to that, no one fired, no accountability whatsoever within the military. And for that, you went, you were held accountable. You were the only person that was ever held accountable. You were sent to the brig. Why is that? Like, take that moment where you do that and then draw the line for me from that moment to the moment we're sitting at right here today, where you're telling me the way we fix accountability is Pete Hegseth.
Yeah, so we'll start with no one was held accountable. You know, General McKenzie got out full retirement. There's a whole university wing being built for him down in Florida. General Donahue just picked up his 4-star. General Farrell Sullivan in the Marine Corps, who left the Abbey Gate open, he's still on his way to 2 stars, progressing. There's not a single person, you know, Milley, all of them, not a single person. And what I asked for in that video was just one of them to raise their hand and acknowledge a mistake. I wasn't even asking for them to give up a retirement or any of the sacrifices that I made, was just to, you know, have a semblance of leadership and own just one part of it. And we didn't get any of that. And so that brings us, you know, 3 years later. Lloyd Austin has been really bad for the Defense Department. And I think an outsider like Pete Hegseth, who's not a 4-star general, who won't protect the status quo, who wasn't beholden to the military industrial complex. I mean, Austin came from Raytheon. He's probably going to go right back there. If you go back to General Mattis, he came from General Dynamics. He's probably going to go back there. So there's a lot of problems that are happening with us hiring these career, you know, politicians, but general officers. We need someone that has combat experience, a major. I mean, Pete Hegseth, for all the right reasons, is someone that we need.
Okay, I want to ask you about 2 things. First, I want to stick with the diagnosis before we get to the solution. Let's talk about careerism. Like, what is the problem and why there is never any accountability? And I hear you about the defense industry, but even the guys that don't leave, it's like the guys that stick around and make their way to the 4-star and 5-star, it takes a level of careerism, I would think, Stu, that separates you from, you know, meritocracy, that separates you from good decisions, separates you from having a lethal fighting force, to creating the best possible American military?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I've thought about this deeply. So the purpose of the military is lethality. It's war fighting. It's winning wars. The military, specifically the American military, hasn't done that in a long time. They really started veering after Vietnam. You have all these other initiatives that kind of distract from warfighting and lethality. But to your point, how do you veer? What's the problem with careerism? Right now in the military, all branches of service are the same way. It's a subjective evaluation. So if I have 5 peers, I'm trying to get my boss to rank me number 1. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm the best. You know, people that play the game long enough realize they just got to get their boss to like them the most. And those 2 things diverge from performance to getting your boss to like you. And 40 years is what it takes to make a 4-star general. There's a huge divergence when you have these people that have really The system has conditioned them to give their boss whatever they want. Anyone that makes a morally courageous stand or tries to do the right thing or takes the hard right is probably going to upset their boss and doesn't advance as far. And so that's why we have these creatures that we have at the top ranks, these 4-stars that have no backbone. So right now, Pete has a lot on his plate. The topic du jour is wokeism. But wokeism really is a symptom of the larger problem. These military officers will give any politician what they want, even if it comes at the peril of warfighting and lethality. And so while we could get rid of anyone that stood for, diversity is our strength, vice winning wars is our strength, having the best performers should be our strength. If we don't get to a performance-based system, then we might still have the problems in the future.
I love that. I think you are dead on there. Wokeism is a symptom. It's the topic du jour, but it's actually a characteristic of this other incentive base, which is to make your boss happy. And in order to make your boss happy so that you advance, you get your promotion, you've got to analyze what makes your boss happy and cater to that. And at some point, Stu, and I want you to help me with this, where is the point where that becomes political? So in other words, the boss knows for me to go the next step, I have to adhere to the political line of those above me. At some point, that is the commander-in-chief. But below that, obviously if there's a Democrat president, this would be the DEI type stuff, then your SecDef is going to echo that stuff to make his boss happy, right? And then the guys under your SecDef are going to echo those things to make their bosses happy. And on and on until you get down the chain. I would hope at some point where it stops being political. At what point in your military career do you feel like you're forced into the political incentive structure, stepping away from lethality?
Well, that's complicated. I'd like to, the easy answer to that is colonel. I mean, 3-star and 4-star generals are elected by Congress, so that's obviously very political. But I'd submit to you, look at the COVID vaccine. There's a great example. COVID vaccine was not unique. So if a service member refused the COVID vaccine, that was the same repercussions across the board, right? So it wasn't like an alcohol-related incident where each situation might be unique. So the service chiefs could have made a policy at their level. If service member refuses vaccine, then this happens. But they didn't do that. They pushed it down to the 05 commanders with this ambiguous, under the surface intent of, if they refuse, we don't want them to be a part of the force. And most 05 commanders knew what the intent was, and then they separated them. And these are guys, some of them 18, 17 years, and they didn't even get honorable discharges. So, you ask at what position it becomes political. That's an 05 commander, only been in 16, 17 years, and 95% of them held the line, even though it didn't really make sense. And so it's a great case study because it was all the same repercussion, in my opinion. So quite honestly, every officer that becomes a careerist, like once you get close to 20 years, they know they got to hold the party line if they want to continue to advance.
And then, so I know you've said this, Stu, that's actually therefore one of the reasons you like Pete. Like, as they train their fire on Pete, and they will continue to through the hearing process, one of the things is like, what's his qualifications? The highest he ever got was to major, and I know that your response to that is, that's not an insult. That's a compliment that he essentially is middle management in the military.
Exactly right. He hasn't become brainwashed into just giving his boss whatever he wants. With his experience, obviously smart guy, Harvard, Princeton, you sat next to him on Fox and Friends and can see how witty, what a good orator he is. But the thing that I love about him the most is not only is he from our generation combat vet, but he is not one of those establishment picks. He can see the bigger picture, and he's a guy that can actually come in and make fundamental reforms. I mean, like once in a lifetime opportunity, and that's why I am 100% supporting him.
Following up on what you said, you and I have had a few conversations. I want to be honest with the audience, and one of the things we've talked about is all the guys who are coming out in support of him. So, we know well on this show, we've talked about the number of Navy SEALs and SEAL community and SEAL supporters who've signed petitions, the number of Special Forces guys who have done so, guys who have fought with Pete. There was one that came out. What is it that came out this morning? Oh, it was retired generals, I think, right?
Yeah,
and a couple of Medal of Honor winners of all 23 retired, 4 or 5-star generals?
123 retired generals and admirals.
Yeah. Along with 2 Medal of Honor winners who've now signed a petition as well. Kind of setting those guys aside for a minute, Stu, you use this phrase, my generation of warfighter. What is it about your generation of warfighter that does seem to connect with Hegseth?
Well, the generals of the past, so the Austins, the Mattises, the Dunfords, those guys all came up right in post-Vietnam. And I think, honestly, Vietnam is where the military got off the rails. If you go back and study it, that's where we went to the all-volunteer force. We allowed the generals to sell a story that the reason we lost in Vietnam was the drugs and the draft and the enlisted service member, when really they made a lot of strategic and operational mistakes, and we never held a general accountable, which in World War II, we fired a lot. In Vietnam, we didn't fire a single one for their failures. And so we really empowered them in a lot of ways. So then that class came up, and you know, the lieutenants right after Vietnam were the Mattises, were the Austins. And for 40 years later, that's the crop of officers that we have. But my generation, the guys that are in their 40s that fought for the last 2 decades, you know, we've seen the mistakes when we were running around Ramadi, Fallujah, when we were running around Helmand Province. You could see that a lot of these wars weren't winnable, and this counterinsurgency strategy that the Petraeuses sung were these brilliant strategies, were not winning. And we were raising our hand and just scratching our head, and you think maybe there's someone smarter that gets it more than you, but after a while you realize that no, we were being lied to. And so I think there's a kind of an awakening in my generation where we have this combat experience, we have this knowledge. You know, I've got a master's in military science, so I've studied all these past wars, and that's kind of where I got to that place where I made that video where, you know, when I made that video, it tapped into a voice of an entire generation, because we all felt the same way. Like, no, this is a long list of obvious mistakes. Why isn't anyone being held accountable? And we needed change, and we all knew it. And that's why recruiting rates are so low right now. You know, it's pretty systemic. And so the military has been a family business for a while in the all-volunteer force. And right now, a lot of conservatives aren't encouraging their sons and daughters to go back into military service because of the problems. And I know Pete, I've spoken to him a couple times. He's getting a lot of letters from families like, hey, I was going to get out, but now I might encourage my sons or daughters to join the military. I've got sitting battalion commanders, you know, prestigious battalion commanders in the Marine Corps right now that I called when I was lobbying support for this, saying that they were going to get out, but they might stick around if Pete Hegseth gets in. So there's a lot of hope. You know, you talked about the warrior class, just to drop a couple names, you know, Scott Mann from the Operation Pineapple there, Matthew Lohmeyer, who wrote The Irresistible Revolution and got forced out, and then Trump offered a job in this next administration, Black Rifle Coffee guys, Eddie Gallagher, Robert Greene, all of these guys I've spoken to in the last couple of weeks, and I can't find a single one that didn't support him. You know, there's a couple female military influencers, and, you know, sometimes the females got caught up in some of the cancel culture that was coming at them. But when we all started as vets unifying, I've had a lot of these females contact me and say, I went back and looked at the facts, and we are now completely supporting Pete. So quite honestly, across the board, I feel like my generation, which is the question you originally asked, overwhelmingly supports Pete, because we know there needs to be changed.
I'm glad you brought up the female fighters. That's something I've been working on as well, in terms of noticing how many are, you know, you wouldn't think so, because the media's talking about, you know, Pete's talking about women in combat and so forth, that there's a lot of female fighters who are out there advocating for Pete. Last thing, Stu, so we talked about accountability and sacrifice and willing to do the right thing. Just share with us, what have you sacrificed over the last several years after you made that video?
Well, I got out short of my retirement. I went through a divorce, was put in solitary confinement, but I'm not a victim. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I had after I came out and went on the media circuit, I wrote a book, and honestly, I started a business, was content just kind of living my life and staying out of the spotlight. I didn't want to run for politics. Everyone, when I did it, said it was for political reasons. And obviously it wasn't. Everyone wanted to attack my character. Nothing fell out of the closet, because surprise, surprise, I'm like, there actually are Americans out there that just love their country and want to try and do the right thing. But it's almost like people can't even comprehend it when you try and do something like that nowadays. And so, you know, it was when I saw Pete Hegseth running, I got excited. I made one post. It was a picture of he and I just wrote the word epic. And then I watched as the next couple of weeks played out, and all these anonymous sources were just assassinating or trying to assassinate his character. And I know Pete. I know what a type of guy he is. You know, I've watched him from afar. I know his background. And it was similar tactics that were played on me when I was going through it. And that's where I decided I was going to get active again. I've jumped into the media again. I'm doing what I can on Capitol Hill. We're meeting with a bunch of U.S. senators tomorrow just to let them know that we, the veterans, the ones that are actually willing to put their names on news articles, 100% support Pete Hegseth.
Well, Stu, I appreciate what you're doing and sharing with us today here on the Will Cain Show. I had no idea that you had a master's in military science, and the way you analyzed Vietnam carrying us through today, I'll just say this is endlessly fascinating to me. So I would love to extend you an open invitation to join us here to talk about history of warfighting and how it can carry us forward in America. I'm fascinated by that, Stu. So you're welcome here on the Will Cain Show.
I would love to
Thank
do
you,
that.
man.
Thanks for having me on, though.
Okay, sweet. There you go. Lieutenant Colonel Stu Scheller here on the Will Cain Show. Okay. Well, let's see. Today is Tuesday. We are counting down to Christmas. We're going to have top 5 lists, getting you through the new year. Of course, we're going to talk about my resolutions. It was a huge failure this year. Going to be upfront with you. Huge failure this year. Did I have quitting nicotine on last year? I've got to revisit my resolutions because that might be a plus. I think I might have accomplished that and even turned one down after breakfast this morning. Boom. So at least one. Green check mark. We'll be doing all that in the next 2 weeks here on The Will Cain Show. Make sure you subscribe, Apple, Spotify, or on YouTube, and we'll see you again next time.